Welcome to RU News Channel. We are here with the news with our analyses about the Russia and Ukraine war. Social media users have suggested that an item that landed in a Russian city around 350 kilometers from the Ukrainian border was a wayward Russian hypersonic missile. Wednesday's event occurred in the Turkmen area of the Stavropol region, according to the Ukrainian military command, which said that 6 persons were injured when a ground explosion occurred while firefighters attempted to extinguish the blaze. Russian media outlets reported that the item was a Ukrainian Tu-141 Strizh surveillance drone. However, the Ukrainian military headquarters said that the debris recovered at the explosion location does not corroborate this story. According to the online newspaper Aerodynamic, Twitter users saw similarities between the wreckage of the airplane and the Russian Kinzhal missile, namely the winglets and the separation mechanism of the weapon's booster, based on images of the aftermath of the event. Anyone wondering what hashtag crashed today and hashtag Russian Stavropol area and injured 6 firemen would be astonished to learn that it wasn't a Ukrainian UAV, but a Russian hashtag Kinzhal missile, tweeted LotA. In a subsequent tweet, the user speculated that the booster or the nozzle's aerodynamic cover had not split from the missile, which would likely indicate that the main engine did not ignite. My best guess is a failure launch against Ukraine. The message was uploaded by open source user OSIN Technical, who stated to their 618,000 followers, in the last 6 months, Russia has fired 3 hypersonic Kh-47M2 Kinzhal missiles towards Ukraine and 1 at itself. The presence of a booster on the debris, according to Aerotime, suggests that the missile either misfired or was dropped by mistake by an aircraft. The Kinzhal missile is a hypersonic weapon belonging to a new class of firearms that Russian President Vladimir Putin has regularly hailed as evidence of Moscow's military might. Russia claims it can achieve speeds up to 12 times the speed of sound. The dam of the Karachunivsk Reservoir in Kryvyi Rih, the central Ukrainian city where President Volodymyr Zelensky was born, was reportedly targeted by the same Russian missile, according to Ukrainian authorities. Oleksandr Vilkel, the city's military administration chief, told the New Voice of Ukraine that Russia had also deployed Iskander missiles to strike the reservoir. Still, it is unclear if the two occurrences are linked. The hits ruined a water pumping facility and inundated the barriers, forcing some inhabitants to evacuate. In his evening speech, Zelensky criticized the attacks, stating that they had absolutely no military value and that targeting hundreds of thousands of innocent people was an additional reason why Russia would lose. Vladimir Putin's soldiers in Ukraine suffered severe setbacks in September. They have been pushed out of practically all of the northern Kharkiv region west of the Oskil River and are losing territory in the southern city of Kherson. In the north, Russian soldiers have been driven into an abrupt retreat, in some instances abandoning half of their equipment, with Ukraine seizing Russian tanks and munitions stores as well as the strategically significant city of Izium. An interactive map from the Institute for the Study of War, ISW, illustrates how drastically the situation has altered since the Russian invasion began on February 24th. The first Russian onslaught was conducted along 3 principal axes. In an attempt to take Kyiv and decapitate Ukraine's government, forces from Russia's ally Belarus rushed south from the north. In the northeast, they attempted to conquer Kharkiv, the second largest city in Ukraine. In the south, Russian soldiers surged out of Crimea, which Putin grabbed in 2014, and made rapid victories in southern Ukraine. Further east, Russian soldiers assaulted the Donbass area, which has been partially controlled by allied proxy nations since 2014. However, they made very modest headway against Ukrainian solid lines. According to the ISW, located in Washington, D.C., the first Russian invasion was somewhat effective, approaching Kyiv from both the northeast and the northwest and conquering a significant portion of Ukraine opposite Crimea, including the cities of Kherson and Melitopol. Mariupol, a crucial Black Sea city between Russia and an unopposed land connection to Crimea, was besieged until mid-May, with Ukrainian soldiers holding out in the Azovstal steel complex. By March 25th, Ukrainian forces had initiated a counterattack, mainly in Kyiv's north. Russian troops withdrew from the region they controlled north of Kyiv and west of Kharkiv by April 8 after becoming bogged down and exposing their supply lines. In April, May, and June, Russian forces began offensive operations in the eastern Donbass area but achieved very modest headway. They captured the strategically significant city of Severodonetsk in mid-June after severe warfare that left most of the town in ruins. During June and July, Ukrainian troops started effectively targeting Russian command positions and ammo caches behind the front lines using HIMARS and other modern Western-supplied weapons. Late in August, they were prepared to go on the offensive, initiating probing strikes near Kherson, which was cut off from the main Russian army south of the Dnieper River. This was but a taste of what was to follow, with Ukrainian soldiers bursting through Russian lines north of Kharkiv and freeing the majority of Kharkiv province from Putin's army. Since the beginning of September, according to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, his soldiers have taken around 6,000 square kilometers of terrain via offensive operations. A veteran NATO general has cautioned that the alliance is not prepared to go to war with Russia if its invasion of Ukraine becomes a worst-case scenario. General Sir Richard Sheriff described the success of Ukraine's counteroffensive as justification for the military backing from the United States and the United Kingdom. The Britain said this might send a strong message to the wavering countries in the alliance on their support for Kiev, especially the Germans who have been pitiful. Sheriff worried that the alliance would be unable to intervene if the conflict spread beyond Ukraine's borders, despite his appeal for NATO countries to take off the gloves and accelerate the delivery of weapons to Kiev. He said that the only way to limit the danger of escalation is for NATO to be prepared for the worst-case scenario. In the worst-case scenario, NATO and Russia would be at war. Since the beginning of Vladimir Putin's full-scale invasion on February 24th, the United States and its NATO allies have attempted to provide Kyiv with military assistance without escalating the war. Russian state media and some Moscow politicians have already framed the confrontation as one between the alliance and Moscow, citing NATO's military assistance to Kyiv. Direct NATO engagement would only occur if one of its member nations were attacked, triggering Article 5 of the alliance's collective defense concept, a circumstance for which Sheriff claims the coalition is unprepared. Preparing for the worst-case scenario requires mobilizing reserves. It necessitates the restoration of capabilities lost through years of military budget reduction. This includes preparing the industry to make artillery rounds, anti-tank weapons, and anti-aircraft missiles, he said. Not only do we need to replenish the stockpiles given to the Ukrainians, but we also need to begin building up our stores since we are depleted. Referring to the help supplied to Kyiv, he remarked, "Check the check for those NATO states who provide weapons." Check the box for Alliance head Jens Stoltenberg's remarks following the NATO summit about the commitment to Ukraine and the defeat of Russia. Sheriff, currently the executive vice chairman of Sigma 7 Global Risk Outcomes, said, but Gamma fails for doing what is necessary to prepare for war. In July, Stoltenberg said that the number of alliance soldiers in high readiness as part of the NATO response force would expand sevenfold in RF. However, in August, he asked Western countries to expeditiously deliver additional weaponry to Ukraine, especially with winter approaching. In March, the alliance's annual report said that just 8 of its 30 members satisfied its standards of spending at least 2% of their gross domestic product, GDP, on the military. Rose Gottmiller said that Ukraine's counteroffensive exemplified how successfully Ukraine has collaborated with NATO members and NATO itself to enhance the effectiveness of its military forces. Sheriff's criticism of Germany follows Ukraine's charges that Berlin rejects Kyiv's requests for armaments such as tanks and infantry combat vehicles, despite having pledged further military assistance. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like our video.